public meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education is now called to order. Please turn off all cell phones and pagers during the meeting, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mike, can you please do a roll call?
Certainly. Mrs. Koloponowicz is absent. Mr. Chiarella?
Here.
Mrs. Antelis?
Here.
Mr. Braverman?
Here.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Klein is absent. Mr. Leary?
Here.
Mr. Masters?
Here.
Mr. Tesler is absent. Mr. Vice President, you have a forum.
Quorum. Thank you, Mr. Gorski. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted July 15th, 2011, and number one, at all schools, number two, at the Home News and Tribune, number three, in the Cranberry Press, and number four, filed with the clerk of the municipality. Moving on to number five, presentation by Mr. Mann of Savings Bond to Grupal Sran, is that right, for winning the American Legion Oratorical Contest.
Good evening. Every year, the American Legion runs an oratorical contest for students in high school. And every year, the students at Monroe High School make us proud. We can all be proud of them, and they reflect the training that they receive in a Monroe Township school system. This year, we're especially proud of Gurpal Saran, who's won awards for the second year in a row. He won't be winning them for us next year because he's going on to college, but we're proud of him, and I know his family is. And Gene Price, commander of Monroe Township Post of the American Legion, will present the check and the award. Gurpal.
I'd like to say a few words first. The American Legion is proud to sponsor high school oratorical competition and boys stand state camps throughout the state and country. We're in these activities expose and encourage the youth and future of our nation to become knowledgeable in the way our government has been established. By first-hand experiences, students learn the processes by which the government at all levels works for the greatest nation on earth. We in the American Legion strongly encourage that our middle and high school place a major emphasis on the studies of how our government is meant to function, including the reading of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution with all its amendments by all students prior to graduation. This year we had 3 contestants from Monroe Township High School in the Constitutional Amendment Oratorical Contest, and all were awarded prizes. Next year we would hope to have many more participants. The first place winner went on to compete in the regional district level. And on behalf of our sponsoring Monroe Township Post 522, I am proud to present to Gurpal Saran the second place award.
Now we'll move on to number 6, Mr. Gorski.
Thank you. On June 17th, I had the pleasure of meeting with Leonard Farr and William Scott of the American Legion Clearbrook Post number 519. These gentlemen informed me that John Manderscheid had bequeathed $2,000 to the Monroe Township Board of Education for a scholarship grant. The purpose of the grant is to help offset higher education costs for a Monroe 12th grade student with an award of $1,000 to be granted in school year 2011-2012, and the final $1,000 to be granted in year 2012-2013. The criteria for determining the award is left solely to the discretion of the principal, as long as it is used for higher education costs. I'd like to introduce Mr. Farr and Mr. Scott.
Good evening. John Manderscheid really had no family except us, and as through us, he bequeathed the $2,000 to go on to another part of the family, which are the students in this school. And we hope that it will encourage those students to excel and to do well. And we thank you for the effort.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the grant.
Second.
Do we have to do a roll call?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any commentary?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the American Legion. I think that's wonderful, and I'm really proud of you. I think that's great. You know, I'm just so happy to see that our community comes together. You know, and we have our senior citizens on the one hand and our students on the other. I think that's what makes really strong, great community, and I think you guys are all doing a great job. And you know, I know you're going to go on to do great things, and hopefully come back and stay in Monroe. You know what I'm saying? Just help us build this community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion passes.
Motion passes. The next item is a public forum. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on any agenda item, please come to the mic and state your name, address for the record.
Anthony Prezioso, 8 Equestrian Way. I spoke to Michael about the lights are in now on the roads, and the crosswalk is in, and everything is perfect. But today, passing by, the kids from the football field were crossing on the corner, and they weren't using the crosswalk. They were going around the fence through the parking lot, the short way. I think there should be a recommendation that they put a fence there, because the whole idea of the crosswalk is that they use it from the field into this high school. And right now, they're not doing that. And this morning I saw it, there was about 50 kids crossing that road on the corner around that turn, and they were going through the parking lot. There's a little opening with a gate that doesn't close the parking lot from the road. So that was my first question. My second one is, there's a resolution here on page 30, bond proceeds. The proceeds, this is extra money left over from the bond, or could somebody answer that?
Mr. Gorski?
Do you want to take that one first?
It says 2008, the bond.
Yes.
And there's a resolution to use the bond proceeds. Is that extra money?
Oh, God.
Partially. As presented to the district's curriculum committee last week, and as recommended by the curriculum committee to the Board of Education this evening, part of the use of the technology budget proceeds with the bond referendum were to be determined at a later time because of the evolution of technology products on the market. And the committee has decided it's such that it is an appropriate time to utilize those funds for $2.3 million of technology equipment as identified on lists presented to the curriculum committee. Part of the money is also a use of surplus, which is available balance in the bond referendum fund.
That's my question. Part of the surplus, can it be used for the upkeep of the school? I know there's going to be a lot more.
Upkeep of the school, you
Well-
mean maintenance?
There's some hidden cost in the high school that's opening up. We all know that. Sooner or later, you're going to get hit with a bill. Shouldn't this go back into that fund that in case there's something that you need, that the taxpayers won't have to pay more money to fund this high school?
Well, maintenance costs cannot be paid for, nor can operational costs from the bond referendum money.
Okay.
Technology equipment is an allowable purchase, and we did take this purchase to our bond counselor, who deemed it to be an appropriate purchase and use of the bond referendum money. There are contingencies built into the bond referendum money for any unforeseen events like you had mentioned. And before it's closed out, those monies will be addressed.
And Mr. Prezioso, early on, we had deferred the choice of purchase or deferred purchasing technology because of like Mr. Gorski said, technological advances. We didn't even know what would exist today. So at that time, we deferred it to the future so it was part of that. We just never purchased anything. We don't have any
Okay,
technology.
it's not just found money that there's extra money.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And your first question, I think, is very valid, and I think that we'll have to take that up and look at that.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Just where the light is. I mean,
Because
there's
there's multiple crossings where they come
yeah,
through.
and these kids, they're kids. I mean, they're laughing, they're not paying attention, and there's some people out there that can't drive. So
And it's one of the things that we were afraid of, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard, Monroe. In looking at the agenda on the website the other day, I noticed, I'm pretty sure I saw, that the closed session was after the public session. Item 14 and 15 were reversed. Now, I didn't look at the website today for the agenda, and I noticed that was unusual because it normally is in this type of a sequence. But what I'm really wondering, is there any reason to have the public session forum after that closed session?
Yes.
Whoever
Judge
wants to-
Wog.
I'm sorry?
Judge Wog, we're under court order.
Well, then put it another way. We have two public forums. Is there any reason we can't have three? Because a lot of people, after you have these many agenda items, people questions may have come up. And quite frankly, they don't want to wait around for an hour or whatever it takes you in the closed session. And if you have to by law have a public forum after the closed session, you could have one. There may not be anybody here to ask any question, but you would comply with the law. And I mean, I feel that we just give the public more of opportunity to ask pertinent questions as the issues were being discussed.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
That's something to consider.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned about just questions based on the agenda items. I have a question that it's not really on the agenda item, and it deals with the additional monies that came in from the state, the additional $800,000. Since I mentioned it, I'll ask my question. What is the plan for that money? Is it going to be used for expenses this year, or is it going to go into reserve to offset any real estate taxes next year, as was the intent of the state?
If I may.
Due to the timeliness of when we receive that notification, the board will have that discussion this evening, and the administration will be making a recommendation, but the entire board has not had the opportunity to be a part of that discussion, so that'll happen this evening.
So it's conceivable, there is a procedure where the budget could be increased for 2011-12 by $800,000 more dollars?
You mean the revenue portion of the budget? Yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, but how about the expenditure portion of it?
That could happen as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Gorski?
Mr. Roche, if I may elaborate on that, the state had clearly defined options on how to handle the money. Number one, you could use it for tax relief in 2011-2012 by revising your 11-12 budget, and that was the one we just had approved.
Right.
resubmitting to the county, revising the Form A4F, which is the tax collection form with the municipality and the county. You had a very short window to do that. I could tell you that after talking to the county executive superintendent and business administrator, a few public school districts chose that option. The other, number two, which you could do with the money is you could appropriate the money in 2011, 2012 as an additional revenue source. Thus, you could spend it in 2011, 2012. Or you could use the money for tax relief in 2012, 2013, or you could even appropriate it for 2012, 2013, or even appropriate it for tax relief in 2013, 2014. So there are numerous options.
Yes.
And because of the complexity of all this, as Dr. Hamilton mentioned. we
So it
wanted
could
to
go in the
discuss
reserves
it.
for next fiscal year's budget and be used to offset taxes.
Yes.
I'd recommend that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
George Gilpin, 5 Kelly Court, Monroe. On page 5, home instruction, the categories are not labeled. I'm just sort of curious about the third column and the last column, what they represent.
Page 5. Here we go. That refers to the date the home instruction began and the date that it ends, and the number of sessions that children were allowed to have.
So the number 8 in the third column stands for what?
The number, I'm sorry, repeat your question?
In the third,
Oh, I'm sorry, the third column, that's the grade that the student
what's
is
the
in.
last column then?
The number of sessions that students are allowed to have based on either their doctor's recommendation, their 504, or whatever other authorization there is for them to be placed on home instruction.
What constitutes a session?
If a youngster is classified, they are entitled to 2 double sessions, and that depends on it varies. It's going to really depend on whether or not they're classified or a general ed student, but it's generally an hour. One session constitutes.
This is per day?
It could be per day, or depending on who the home instructor is, or what arrangements are made with the parent. If they're eligible for 10 hours, for example, it could happen over the course of 1 week, 2 hours a day. It could happen on a Saturday, any combination thereof.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We want to, yep, for the meeting of, I want to see if I can get a motion for the approval of the June 15th, 2011 meeting.
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you, Lou.
Who was that? Masters?
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstained because I wasn't at the meeting.
So noted. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Closed session.
On here.
Closed session, June 15th.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The board received a copy of the closed session minutes for June 15, 2011, but it was inadvertently left off of the agenda. Can I please get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Second, anybody?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Masters.
Comments?
Oh, comments? Yes. Does that
First
tell
of
us?
all, on the list of board members present, you have Mr. Kaufman and Ms. Kathy Leonard, and I don't believe either one of them were in that meeting.
No, very good. That's a good catch.
No out of me.
Thank you. So- Now we'll move on to item number 9.
I think we have to vote.
Oh, I'm new, my first time with this, you have to forgive me. Let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
You need a,
Roll call?
no, we should entertain a motion to revise the minutes.
Oh, we have, yes.
To reflect the changes that Mrs. Antelis just mentioned.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Make a motion to revise the minutes to reflect that Ms. Leonard and Mr. Kaufman were not in the meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Motion to revise passes.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll move on to item number 9.
Superintendent's report. Enclosed in your agenda is the enrollment report, which summarizes our student enrollment data for the close of school in June 2011 with 5,719 students, representing an increase from the previous year of 157 students for essentially the same period. Enrollment for out-of-district placements and home instruction is also included in your agenda, as well as the number of fire drills listed as number 3 on the agenda, fire drills and lockdown procedures as required by law. Moving on to personnel items, Mr. Board Vice President, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through DD be approved by roll call consent vote.
Any,
So moved.
well, were there any questions, comments?
Who made the motion?
I did.
Luke Kaufman, second.
I noticed on the enrollment figures, we have a slowed down increase in the growth rate of the high school. And where do we stand with Jamesburg, and what will that do to our profile as we look forward?
Currently, we are, as you know, there is a recommendation and an agreement that seeks to sever that relationship. However, if that agreement was to be fully implemented, that would affect our enrollment for the 2012-2013 school year. However, we are still entertaining conversations with Jamesburg through council and through administration on ways that we may be able to sever that relationship, but no definitive recommendation has been presented that we could present to this board for consideration.
I've done a back of the envelope calculation, and the departure of Jamesburg could give us 6 years of additional capacity.
That's probably very true. Over the course of 2, 3, probably 4 years, that will result in 225 students times that period of time. That's probably correct.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Gorski, could we take a roll call, please?
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, personnel items A through D passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to board action items, represented as Roman numeral 5 on your agenda, Mr. Board Vice President, is recommended by the superintendent that members of the Board of Education approve items A through N by roll call vote.
Are there any questions or comments?
Motion in a second.
Can I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Mr. Braverman.
Second,
Mr. Braverman? Thank you. Any questions?
After
Mr.
the
Leary?
board would like to make a comment.
Would you like to make a comment now before we vote?
It really gets to the whole question of what is a policy and what is a regulation. When you take a look at, I thought I had a loud enough voice. I guess I'm gonna have to get more. Can you hear me now? Okay. You take a look at policy 5512. It runs for 25 pages and it details unbelievable minutia. This is an example of unbelievable nitpicking. And we know who's responsible for it because a couple of days ago in the Home News Tribune, in a laudatory article talking about the former superintendent of Metuchen and her state senator, Barbara Bono, they put this monstrosity into the law. And now we got 25 pages of policy. Policy should be 2 or 3 pages. Better yet, maybe only be 3 paragraphs. But the idea of 25 pages of policy statement is unbelievable. But we can't do anything about it because it's mandatory, it's law.
Correct.
Just wanted to get that off my chest.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Roll call, Mr. Gorski, please.
This is board action items A through N. Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, board action items A through N passes.
Thank you.
And moving on to another item not listed on the agenda but presented during our public forum, I'd like to entertain a conversation with the board regarding the utilization of the additional state aid money that has been allocated to our district. Mr. Gorski will summarize again what those options are that are available to us and what actions we've taken at this point regarding our obligation to report back to the state. And then after hearing your discussions, we'd like to share with you some of our recommendations for the utilization of those funds. Mr. Gorski?
Thank you, Doctor. Last week, our district was notified via the state's public address system known as New Jersey Homeroom that we had received an additional state aid award of $887,122. This represented a doubling of our categorical special education aid award for 2011-2012 for the previously approved budget. The state had issued guidance a few days later, and the guidance again includes the following. The first option, known as option number 1, is to use the money for tax relief in 2011-2012 by not appropriating the money and by revising your 2011-2012 budget, resubmitting the budget to the state after executive county and superintendent approval. That $887,122 applied to our tax schedule, if applied for tax relief, would result in approximately a reduction of $20 for the average assessed home using the county's average assessed value of $169,622. The other option that you have is you could appropriate and or spend the money in 2011-2012. That would also require a revised budget to be resubmitted to the county executive superintendent of schools, where said person would do an efficiency review and make sure it was an appropriate and efficient use of the funds. If approved, the budget would come back to the Board of Education for final approval, and you could spend those monies in 2011-2012. If you did not spend those monies after appropriating them, they would flow to excess surplus. The other option you could do with the money is apply it for 2012-2013 for tax relief, or you could appropriate the money in 2012-2013, which is next year's budget, of course. If you appropriated the money in 2012-2013 and did not spend it, it would flow for excess surplus for tax relief in year 2013-2014. There was a very short window for boards of education to decide if they were going to use the money for tax relief in 2011 and 2012. And pursuant to my discussions with Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Leary, chairperson of the Finance Committee, we did not have enough time to address this at the Finance Committee meeting yesterday. It had to go out on July 15th. So it was determined by administration and the finance chair that we would not use the money for tax relief in 2011-2012, and instead we notified John Nemeth, Executive County Business Administrator, that we would be holding a Finance Committee meeting the very next day, July 16th, And it's administration's recommendation to the committee to either choose option number 2, which is appropriations of the money in the 2011-2012 school year, or option number 3, 2012-2013 tax relief, or some combination of those two. After the Finance Committee meeting had met, it was determined that the issue should come to the board for further discussion.
So based on that information, there are a couple of items that, as you know, were removed from our budget. One in particular is the science program that we have been trying to implement for the last 2 years, and each year it has been removed. And we also removed several other services to our students, among them the zero period. I also recognize the political sensitivity of this matter as it relates to the governor's position that these funds should be utilized for tax relief. The recommendation from the administration is that we consider a combination of those two so that our children benefit from these additional funds in some capacity. And so I would recommend to this committee, to this board, and certainly be directed by your ultimate decision, that we consider implementing our science program that has been deferred for the last 2 years, or some part of that science program, and reinstate the zero period transportation, and then take the reserve, whatever is left beyond that, to offset tax relief for the 2013-2014 school year, or 2012-2013 school year. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion before the board that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Yeah, are there any questions or comments? Anyone have?
I'd like to
Ms.
speak a
Antelos?
little bit about it. Yes, I spoke to Mr. Gorski today about it and asked him exactly the same thing that he said today about what would be the refund to the taxpayers. When you think about $20 going back on somebody's tax bill that they're really never even going to notice, I think that the money is well spent to bring back programs that were eliminated because of the funding. So therefore, I'd like to recommend, and hopefully the board will too, that we bring these programs back.
I second it.
Mr. Braverman?
Motion.
Would that include the pay for extracurricular programs?
It would not. That would be a separate initiative altogether. The zero period would be primarily to provide transportation for those students who attend music instruction, chorus, band, before the day begins. It would not impact the pay to participate initiative.
Do we have a dollar amount that's associated with this yet? Because we're going to approve something without knowing a dollar amount.
Yes, actually, the science program in full implementation would cost $397,000. The zero period transportation, this is about $250,000. And those two items together are for about $600,000, close to $650,000. We could also look at a gradual implementation of the science program that would not utilize so much if the board's desire was to return more in terms of tax relief. So there are a couple of combinations of those options we could consider.
Just personally, I think if we can get closer to a 50-50 split, I think it would be, a little bit more palatable. As much as I don't want to see the programs cut.
Use the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. I'd like to see us try and manage closer to a 50-50 split, because if, taxpayers are going to get back some money, the school districts get something, everybody's got a little skin in the game, right? So at least that's my personal opinion. If we can get closer to a 50-50 split, I think that would work out a little bit better, 60-40 kind of.
I'd go for the science program, because I think that when you look at where we are in the United States and the need for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the faster we can get our children involved in that, the better off we are.
I agree. What does that mean? I'll have $10 relief?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
That means I'm going to have $10 relief instead of $20?
Yes.
Well, what shall I do with it?
Spend it wisely.
You could buy me donuts or...
May I make a remark?
Yes.
This is an example. I used to live in New York, and we used to have these guys who played the Monty game. You know, had 3 shells in front on a little stand, and they had the pea in their pocket, and they'd go juggling around. And hey, they say we're going to give you 800,000. Wow! But you got to go this way. The reality is we should be getting $42 million, and all we're getting is $2 million. We're getting very, very bad treatment.
Mr. Chiro, just want to make another comment. I know that in the past, and I believe it's actually gone on forever, we've never gotten the last payment. So therefore, we probably won't get the full $887,000. So therefore, I don't even see how it could end up being a 50-50 split, because more than likely it's going to happen again. So, like I said, I support going for both programs. I think it's great that we did get a little bit of money and we can bring some things back that for our students. And I think for $20 on everybody's tax bill, it's well worth it.
I think, I'm gonna let myself speak for a second. I think that I agree. I think, you know, we have to be mindful of the situation, the plight that our taxpayers are in, but I think to go and say, here, we're giving you $20 back each for all your hard work. I really think that it's not, we're not really doing anything by doing that. I think that you could also make the argument that by giving it to the students, we are giving it back because we're helping to reinstate some programs, much needed programs. I think the science program is probably well overdue, the implementation of that, and I think that that'll benefit all, you know, our students and our citizens overall by having that. So that's my 2 cents.
I have a question. What's the implication of removing the pay to play? How much is I think I remember like 160,000 or something like that.
Pay to participate was an additional revenue source to the budget of $180,000 approximately,
Okay.
with a $15,000 reserve for students on free and reduced lunch would not be charged. So it's somewhere about 165.
So just looking at the numbers, if we were to bring back the science and eliminate pay to play, does that bring us around 500 to 400,000?
State your question again, Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, the question is if bringing back the science and eliminating the pay to play get us closer to the $400,000 mark.
That's correct.
The science by itself would be a 50-50 split.
What was the science number?
397 out of 800.
And zero period was?
250. But Mr. Kaufman's question wasn't about zero period, it was about pay to participate. Those are 2 different initiatives.
We got a whole flock of things in front of us that would be chopped up.
Right.
Just personally, because I've been thinking about like money coming out of people's pockets, right? Science program is definitely a benefit to the entire school system. The pay to participate issue would actually not cause an additional burden to the taxpayers. So we're able to offset that cost. In addition, we're able to bring back a little bit more tax money to the taxpayers. So I think in totality, when everything is all said and done, everybody gets something out of it. We're able to bring back programs, add more services, and I hate saying win-win, but I think everybody comes out with a piece of something.
So is there a motion?
Yes, I made
She made it, Mr. Larry seconded it.
And the motion was to accept your recommendation the way you did.
So we can move to roll call?
You want to make your final?
Yes, the recommendation is to use the recent allocation of state aid to implement the science program at $397,000, restore the zero period transportation that was removed from the budget at $250,000, and retake the reserve, the difference between that and the amount of aid, and return it to the taxpayers by way of tax relief in the next budget cycle.
We already have a motion and a second. Roll call. Did you want to, Mr.
Well,
Gorski?
if I may add to that, we should also incorporate in that
Exactly.
motion the acceptance of the state aid. If I may read it, incorporating some statutory requirements for the superintendent, executive superintendent of schools. Board Vice President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended that the additional state aid amount in the amount of $887,122 be accepted and appropriated for use in the 2011-2012 fiscal school year, pending approval of the revised budget by the Executive County Superintendent of Schools, in the fashion restoring and appropriating approximately $397,000 for the science program, $250,000 for zero-period transportation, and the remainder for tax relief in 2011, 2012, 2013.
Do you want me to ask for a roll call now? Because we already have the motion. Yeah.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein? Absent. Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
No.
Mr. Tesler is absent. Mrs. Koloponowicz is absent. Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, motion passes.
Okay, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
The board president is not here, but, we're going to move on to the business administrator's report now. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I realize I've had a lot to say.
Yeah, I thought you were already having your report. I apologize.
The business administrator's report is going to be broken into letters A through T, and U and V will be read as a separate roll call. Board Vice President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through T be approved by consent roll call. Items U and V will each be done as a separate roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or
Who
comments?
was second? Mr. Braverman?
No? Roll call?
Mrs. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, board action items A through T under the Business Administrator's report passes. Mr. Board Vice President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended that board action item U be approved by consent roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Comment.
Yes, Mr. Leary?
I have serious problems with this use of bond proceeds because, first, it's an example of stovepipe management. We have a variety of standing committees, and this only went to the curriculum committee. And I chair the finance committee, and I only learned about this by happenstance. I don't think that's right. Second of all, the timing of this is at the 11th hour and 59th minute. I think this should be tabled and have a cross-cut, fully staffed out study that involves all members of the board.
Ms. Antelis?
I've been even though I'm not on the various committees, I do attend the meetings, and I did sit and listen at the curriculum meeting about these iPads, and I saw data that showed that there was a significant improvement in student learning and scores by using these. And I'm not an educator, that's not my profession, so when Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Borman come to me and tell me that this is something that is really going to benefit our students, I'm going to support it.
Mr. Kaufman?
As chairman of the curriculum committee, I just want to let the members of the public know a few things. I've been on the school board for quite a few years, and when it came up to this particular item, I'd have to say that we, for lack of a better term, drilled the administration pretty good on this one, and you could probably see they're all smiling. They came before the board to present their proposal. All the members at the committee had some very serious questions about the use, the appropriations, and all of those types of things. And it was deemed at the meeting that we would have to have a follow-up meeting before our meeting tonight, so that we can get all the information that we could possibly get to make sure that we're spending the money that had been appropriated in the bond referendum appropriately. I think a lot of us board members have been around long enough to know that we don't want to see anything go to waste. And if we can get $1.10 out of every dollar that we collect, that's a home run for the district. In this particular case, we understand the political ramifications here, because the message may go forth that, iPads are coming, where's this money coming from? This is all money that was part of the original bond referendum. This is not new money. This is not clearly state money. This is money that was all part of the pot when we approved this years ago. So I want to make that crystal clear. We have gone through the due diligence. In today's market, I can buy 3 iPads for the course of 1 laptop. So in a sense, we're getting much bigger bang for the buck in all sense of the word. So I feel the committee has done everything we possibly can. We're looking to be very aggressive with the administration to try and move to a textbook-free environment in the very near future, now that we'll be able to have all of this state-of-the-art technology in a very small, confined space. And we're going to challenge this administration to get us there. Textbooks cost a lot of money. And just the savings in the district of not having to buy textbooks in long term is clearly a cost benefit across the board. So I feel confident that we've done all that we can possibly do, and we're staging the proper setting for the new high school when it opens up.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes, Mr. Leary.
I am not contesting the technical feasibility. And we have some very, very good technology people in this Board of Education. I am contesting the management processes. And that's where my concern is, and the timing. This is coming in at the 11th hour and the 59th minute. It should have been looked at 2 years ago and gone through the normal staffing out processes.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Kaufman, may I just ask you a question? From what I understand, and it's the same, I'm kind of mirroring what Ms. Zantalis is saying, that I've been aware that there have been a number of things that the Technology Committee's been looking at as far as being able to outfit the new high school with technology. Can you tell us, basically what technology exists now? Let's say we put this off. What would happen to what kind of technology would our students be, using? What would happen to our district and the students without that?
Well, this is a complete change in education. You have to understand that the paradigm is shifting, and by us delaying the appropriations of the money that are already in the budget, kind of anyway, by delaying this in any way, we are pushing back the deliverable from when this equipment will be ready for the students come day one. We're already planning that the equipment won't be ready on the first day of school. That's clear. There's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of signing that people will have to do before they will be handed a piece of school board equipment. So there's a lot of logistical things that have to happen even before that stuff happens. But we will be delaying by at least minimally a month, because we would have to discuss this and not make another board action until the next Board of Education meeting, unless you determine you want to set up another meeting, that we will be delaying. Again, the question isn't whether or not the technology is good or bad. The funding is there in the school, in the budget, so it's not a question of are we reappropriating or reassigning money. No, it was earmarked for technology anyway, so we're not going out of normal course of business for other things that we've done. If that was the case, every time we approve a textbook, it has to go through, finance, or a new, science curriculum, this type of thing, so.
We're talking several millions of dollars here, and I think that should have a review by the Finance Committee, and we're also talking about potential for other sources of funding by looking at leasing and other arrangements.
Mr. Board Vice President, if I may, if I could ask Dr. Gorman to kind of reiterate for the board the process that we've gone through. It is, while this recommendation is coming at a time when the items need to be ordered, it certainly is not a process that has been taken lightly, haphazardly, or has been rushed. Dr. Gorman.
Thank you.
About 7 or 8 months ago, we started looking at what type of technology is going to be appropriate for our new high school. 10 or 5 or even 2 years ago, the technology would be vastly different than what it looks like today. And that's a little scary, but it's also exciting, and it's a reality of this type of learning environment and the economy we live in. The technology has ramped up and is efficient and works and is very easily accessible and to all students in a global society, for lack of using the buzzwords global society and 21st century. So over the last 7 or 8 months, we conducted site visits. We invited the entire Board of Education to go see a one-to-one laptop initiative at Paxcac Valley High School. We took that visit with our central administration and anybody that wanted to go, and we questioned and evaluated their process, including looking at their acceptable use policies and their implementation plan. After that, we conducted a strategic planning day for what technology would look like for our community. And again, board members were asked to attend that whole process, and I do believe Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Masters, and Mr. Braverman attended that full day strategic planning process. In addition to going and making presentations to the curriculum committee, we then had different vendors basically sell their product and propose their product to us through about a 2-3 hour meeting where we had Dell, HP, and Apple, and made extensive recommendations on why their product would best meet the needs of our student learners. And lastly, we went through several curriculum committee discussions, research, and conversations, bantering and talking and having professional discourse on what the best medium for our students would be as we go forward, and that is how we arrived at this recommendation. So we're incredibly excited about the potential to ramp up student achievement and learning, to extending the school day past the confines of a 6-hour school day by having kids access learning and technology and having a device where they could be totally vested in the learning process and be meaningful to themselves and what interests them, to be responsible for their own learning. And that's basically an overview of the process of the last 7 or 8 months.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
This is a perfect example of stovepipe management. Again and again, curriculum committee. We need to have cross currents across all the committees.
And Mr. Leary, I do understand what you're saying, but we were all extended that invitation to go on that day, that full day event. I know you may have been away or you may have had some things going on, but I know the invitations were extended, and I do know that I'm not on the curriculum committee, but I had been, I've been apprised of what was going on step by step.
This came to me as a complete surprise a week ago, bolt out of the blue.
Okay, the only thing that I want to get across is that it may have been a surprise to you, but I know that for most of us here, it wasn't a surprise for us, that we have been apprised. I mean, I know I've been in communication with a couple of the members of the curriculum committee as well as the administration on this. I know we were all invited, and that's all I'm saying. I think that tabling this to go through other committees at this point will just do nothing but delay.
Put it up for a vote. That's all I say.
We have your motion on the table. Is there anyone that wants to second Mr. Leary's motion?
I think we had a motion.
No, he made a motion.
Oh, to table it?
I don't think he made a motion. I think he made a comment. He didn't make a motion.
Initially, it was a comment.
Right.
I'll make a motion that item U be tabled for further discussion and cross-cut across the committees and get the full committee up to speed. I rest.
Is there a second for Mr. Leary's? None? Okay.
So now back to the
Then we're
original.
back to the original motion to accept the business administrator's report.
Item U.
Roll call?
Again, this is item U, resolution, use of bond proceeds for technology equipment. Mrs. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
No.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, item U, under board action, under the business administrator report has passed, leading to board action item V. Board Vice President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended that board action item V be approved by consent. Roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Gorski?
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Board Vice President, board action item V under the business administrator report passes.
Thank you.
That concludes the business administrator's report.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to the board president's report. The board president is away, but I would like to just make a couple comments, if I may, that the high school transition, Mr. Goodall is here, is underway, and I just want to thank the teachers, the administrators, everyone, all of our support staff, everyone who's really stepping up and doing a lot of work. And I see these. If any of you have seen all the piles of stuff in the high school and the trucks going back and forth, everybody's really doing their part, and painting and cleaning and everything's underway. And I just wanted to thank all of them for their efforts, and I think this is going to be a great transition and a smooth transition. I hope. I was going to knock on wood, but I'll knock on this. But again, just thank you very much. And that's all I had. Committee reports? We'll move on. Anyone having any committee reports?
Was this committee report?
Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Braverman?
I'd like to say the policy committee reviewed all of the policies that were on tonight's agenda, and the length sometimes depends on our living in a litigious society, and all the T's have to be crossed and the I's have to be dotted.
Thank you, sir. Any other committee reports? I do have a couple. We had the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee meeting. And I'll be quick. We did go over a lot of things here, but the last piece of our C of O for the new high school is we're waiting for that, so we have to stay out of the kitchen for now until that's complete. But other than that, we're rolling forward, which I think is wonderful. One of the big things with the high school is that we're looking at implementing solar panels on the roof, which I think in the long term will help us not only go green but see a significant savings in our power rates, our electrical rates. We're looking at a couple different options now, and we're looking to right now we're just exploring our options and looking to go forward and looking to see what would best benefit our taxpayers and the overall just the district. The renovation of this school, our new middle school, the approval is here for that, so that's underway. The renovations are underway, as you can see if you took a walk around. We talked about painting the board office, which is in much need of paint and repair. If you go up close to that thing, it's peeling and it's doing all kinds of things. We promised not to paint it purple, but we are going to paint it. We haven't picked a color yet. Jerry Tague showed us his IPM report, that's integrated pest management report, that by law we have to comply with and produce. It's a couple inches thick, and basically what it does is it just talks about all the different pest management strategies and some of the things that we have in use. Thankfully, we haven't had much in the way of chemicals to have to use, but some of the things that we talked about I think are pretty good. We talked about in the future limiting some of the things like fertilizers and chemicals on the lawns of the schools, on the playing fields and stuff like that. Though that might result in a few more dandelions and that sort of thing, but it would also result in less chemical exposure to our students, which I think is probably the best way to go, and maybe you'll help keep a few extra bees alive in the process. So we're taking a look at that. And then we also talked about our transportation services contract. Our director of transportation, as everyone knows, has left, or is in the process of leaving our district. And what we're going to do in the interim is retain her on a per diem basis, to retain her expertise as we make a transition to a new director, so that we have a smooth flow going into the start of our school year. So that's going to be a very short-term window for that, but it'll give us some time to find the right candidate, so that we're sure that we have the right person leading the transportation of our children, which is obviously could be a nightmare if we don't do the right thing. So we're going to be very careful and cautious with how we go with that, and this is probably, or I believe it's the right step to take. And that's it for my report. Anybody else? That's wrong.
Does that mean other board business? Anything else?
Yeah, no. Now it means other board business. Mr. Braverman?
Thank you. I move that the high school auditorium be named the Monroe Performing Arts Center.
Second.
Is there anyone have any questions or comments, discussion about that?
Mr. Braverman, is that in lieu of naming it after somebody? Is that what your fear is?
Well, that's something that can happen in the future, certainly, but I've heard the mayor quoted as saying that our high school is the keystone of the community, and I think it should be named for the community, Monroe Performing Arts Center.
Second by Amy.
It could lead to one problem. Monroe, we have two of them in the state of New Jersey, one down in Gloucester, which has got very shabby academic credentials. And here in Middlesex, we've got pretty good credentials, and we're getting better. And so I'd say Monroe Township, Parents, Middlesex.
Mr. Chiarella? I just want to give a reason why I agree with Mr. Braverman on this. After being on the board 18 years, I know there was a lot of controversy when this auditorium was named after Dr. Richard Marasco. There was quite a bit of discussion on the board for a long time. And I know that in the past, while we've tried to do good things by naming certain areas after people, unfortunately, in the end, somebody usually ends up getting hurt by it because they feel left out. So I do believe in the future, having learned that lesson, that we should just keep things generic.
Okay. I would like to see, can I get clarity on that? Is it Monroe or Monroe Township Performing Arts Center?
Monroe.
Thank you.
Wait, just clarify this again. This is the new high school's what?
Auditorium.
Auditorium.
Okay, my question is, I understand partially what Amy and Mr. and Marv are saying, but if we're not going to name it after anyone, does it have to be named specifically Monroe Township? And is it Monroe Township High School Performing Arts Center or Monroe Township Performing Arts Center?
Yeah, that's the question. That's what I just asked too.
More clarification.
I'm not really comfortable supporting it, like,
Yeah, I agree.
I need to
No, I agree
process
with
this
you. I
a
don't
little
know.
more.
I mean,
you can
I'd
vote
like
on
to,
it.
you know, maybe discuss that in the future. Or discuss that with them, but as of right now, I wouldn't be comfortable naming it anything until we, I don't know.
Well, there's a motion and a second.
Yes.
So
You can do roll call.
vote.
Okay, this is a motion to name the auditorium at the new Monroe Township High School following Monroe Performing Arts Center. Motion was made by Mr. Braverman and seconded by Mrs. Antelis. Roll call, Mrs. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Leary?
No.
Mr. Masters?
No.
Mr. Chiarella?
No.
Mr. Board Vice President, motion to name the new Monroe Township High School auditorium the Monroe Performing Arts Center has not passed.
Thank you. Now we'll, there any other board business? There will be no closed session tonight, so we will move on to item 15, the public forum. Again, anyone wishing to speak, please come to the mic, give your name and address. Mr. Gunkelman?
George Gunkelman, 5 Kelly Court, Monroe. Maybe Monroe Township.
Middlesex County, too.
Yeah, not to be confused with. Since I started with that as a joke, I'll go on with it. My wife was involved with the Cultural Arts Committee for a number of years and has booked a number of the things that the cultural arts has done in this facility. And it brings out large numbers, not as large as we would like always, but often large numbers of the community to the facility. And I think it's one of the ways the school gains support of the larger community by having these activities. And while we may be Monroe Township, having a simple, clear title without somebody's name attached to it, which makes it harder to direct people to it, by the way, would be an asset. Something to think about in the future. It really does make a difference. It makes an impact on the citizen of the township's perception of its involvement with the school, particularly those who do not have children active in the school. Enough said. Pay to participate. I apologize for not being at the meeting where that was explained. Could someone explain it to me briefly?
Sure. Mike, you want to take it?
Yes. As part of the budget process, we were faced with a shortfall in state aid. We were faced with a 2% tax levy cap, which put very significant constrictions on the budget. Also included in there is the cost with opening the new high school, the operating costs, conversion of the Monroe Township Old High School to the middle school, and the closure of Apple Garth for asbestos remediation for a period of 1 year. Some difficult budget decisions had to be made by the committee and the board, and one of the items proposed was a pay-to-participate program to generate additional revenue of an estimated $180,000 with a reserve for children who can't afford it on the free and reduced lunch program who would be exempt, and any other special circumstances as deemed appropriate by the superintendent. The cost would be $100 per student per athletic venue and $25 for club participation. And there was significant consideration of the list of clubs by Dr. Gorman, Dr. Hamilton, and myself, and also the policy committee, to determine which clubs should be exempt. Certainly something that you're elected to, like the National Honor Society, or those clubs that have a school service orientation or a social or societal benefit, were exempt. And the list of items is included in the policy up front, as well as the policy that was designed around this pay-to-participate program.
Okay, so if you're a four-letter athlete, the family's burden on that is minimally $400 plus what other clubs they belong to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Zero period transportation. What is that?
Currently, the district provides transportation to students who have choral or instrumental music instruction, band and chorus specifically, before the traditional school day begins.
Okay, is that a club?
No.
So there's no pay to participate in that?
No.
But we're paying teachers to be here?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you figure out that budget, it's just transportation? Is that 100%? I think the item was 158,000, if I recall.
Zero period transportation was one of the last transportation service items that were offered by the Board of Education. It's a $250,000 appropriation to deliver students to school for the purposes previously mentioned by Dr. Hamilton. Again, because of the budget constraints, the Finance Committee and the Board of Education recommended elimination of the zero period transportation. The programs themselves will still be offered, and previously the programs were offered without transportation, and I understand they were still successful at that time. So that service of transporting the students for that was eliminated for the 2011-2012 budget.
But the vote tonight was to put it back in with the additional monies?
Correct.
So it's not eliminated?
Not eliminated.
Okay. Now, what's in the 250? Is it?
That's.
Well, you say transportation, but is it fuel?
Yes.
Is it drivers?
Yes.
It's all of that.
Is it depreciation?
Yes.
Yes. It is?
Yes, it's consideration of depreciation on the buses, fuel, driver's salaries, driver's benefits, and that's what went into it.
And those depreciation funds go into a reserve fund?
Depreciation on the vehicles goes into a government-wide fund on the annual financial report at the conclusion of the school year, which is June 30th. And
So is it a reserve fund?
Is it a reserve fund? No. It's a contra asset fund. The bus itself is the asset, and the depreciation charge is an expense, and accumulated depreciation is a contra asset account.
Held by?
Held by the fixed assets fund.
Of the board?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robert Roach, 18 Yorkfield Boulevard. During the course of after the budget was defeated, Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Kaufman appeared before Council President Jerry Tambora, and this item was discussed, the zero period busing, and it was eliminated. During the course of that, I don't want to say testimony, but conversation, I guess, and question and answer, I can't remember which one, but one of either Dr. Hamilton or Mr. Kaufman indicated that the elimination of that item would not have any impact on the quality of the education for the students, something along that line. Council President Tambora asked that type of question every time something was being eliminated. So since the board at that time indicated that it was not going to have an impact, I think it is inappropriate now, because you have additional monies, to come back and put that item back into the budget. That's one comment that I have. Second comment is I'm somewhat disappointed in the jovial manner which the board, some members of the board, were discussing the savings to taxpayers. $20 can be important to other people, and there's not many people in this town that has a house assessed at $169,000. To many people, it would be more. I think this last election, when the main budget was defeated, as it had been in prior years, and when the budget, the request for the item for full-day kindergarten was defeated in every district in the town, I think it tells you that the people are concerned with the amount of taxes that they're paying. Yes, $10 probably would not hurt anybody. But you add this item, it's $10 here, it's $20 there, it's $30. All of a sudden, it becomes money. And I think that you should be a little more professional in when you're discussing the use of taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Good evening, Doug Boyd, 4 Tamarack Road. From the sounds of it, we're going to be spending $2.4 million to purchase iPads for the high school. Is that essentially correct?
No.
No. Oh, okay. Because I thought I heard the mention of iPads being the new technology.
iPads will be a part of the technology order, but that number represents all the technology equipment that would be going into the new facility.
Okay. Now, in terms of the iPads, I would like to hear some further elaboration on how the curriculum committee or the board sees that particular type of technology being implemented within the first year of the high school. I heard Mr. Kaufman say something about the iPad replacing textbooks, and yes, there is a movement in that direction, but that does not come cost-free, because you have to purchase the licenses. And I'm just wondering, has the curriculum committee looked at those costs in terms of how it will compare to the cost of textbooks? So I would just appreciate it as a member of the public to hear some further elaboration on that. Thank you.
Okay. The iPad is considered a learning device, so first and foremost, the connection and sharing of content is probably the most powerful outcome based on it. And what I'll do is I will leave, and now that it's been approved, we have a very extensive master plan that'll talk about curriculum, instruction, assessment, deployment, infrastructure, communication, vision, goals. But I will leave this for you as we leave. This is basically a content ecosystem and describes the main vision of a one-to-one learning device. Besides the fact that kids will be able to access their work past the school day, the sharing of content and the creating of new content and sharing that and getting input is probably the most powerful component of learning. When you give each person a one-to-one learning device, you're individualizing the learning experience for the individual. There are 2 studies specifically that talk about when student achievement goes up, and they're not the only 2 studies, but having the most impact are structured choice, having choice as a learner, and engagement as a learner. And this type of technology ramps up instantly level of engagement and making your own choices for learning as an individual learning with this type of tool. next month, as soon as next month, I'll give you a comprehensive rollout of the type of extensive professional development that's involved with the use of wikis, the use of certain applications, the use of individual electronic portfolios, the use of sharing content and differentiating. And so one of the major shifts will be teacher-centeredness to student-centeredness. And to me, that is a big transition from your traditional high school, which research study after research study has shown that society and our community have changed over the last 50 years, but the high school remains a traditional road experience of giving content out. So this one-to-one learning device initiative really begins to and will shift the paradigm. We have evaluative tools, parent surveys, teacher-student surveys, student surveys of what the classroom environment looks now, baseline data, and then what it will look 6 months from now after deployment and professional development, what it will look 1 year from now. And we'll be using all of those tools, the inclusion of blogs and leadership to communicate with the community, with the students, with the parents. Will really, in my opinion, ramp up the learning experience. I also have many qualitative and quantitative research studies already that have been published on one-to-one initiatives from different states, whether it comes from the first big one coming out of Maine to different studies that are now being deployed and used currently. And so while there's a foundation already there, we're also going to be able to create our own data and analyze that. But the driving force is student achievement and learning for each individualized learner. So I can't give you that all right now, but we will do for lack of a better term, the marketing blitz to educate you, very much like we've been doing with the AVID program over the last 2 years. You will see very similar outcomes from students, from parents, from teachers, from administrators. But this is the major grasp of the content sharing. And I'll just leave you with one more, even though I could talk about this forever. The concept of YouTube. And that's a change in our society over the last 10 years. Why do people post videos on YouTube? And the reason is, one of the primary reasons is to get feedback. So people can view it and then comment and get feedback on it.
Anthony Weiner, of course.
Whatever it is, but it is the shaping and sharing of the world instantly. At instant access. So in the 20th century, it was all about getting the content and accessing it. Now it's about sharing it and creating new content. And that's as philosophical as I think I should get into it now, but you'll hear a lot from us very soon on this.
Dr. Gorman's very passionate about this topic. Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to what Dr. Gorman said a little bit earlier. I'm a little more practical. I need to see something, right? Especially in your question, what are we going to see for in the first year, right? Since this is a paradigm shift in education, I look at this, and this is just Lou speaking, as the real money is going to be in the content. I know that there are going to be publishers that are going to be publishing books that are going to be making e-books more appropriate, but I'm challenging this district to go beyond that. There are websites in the thousands that teach American Revolution, right? They're all over the place. They're real videos, real-time videos. They're all over the place, and it's part of the public domain. We need to start thinking differently about how we're going to collect this content, store it, and move forward beyond publishers that produce stuff that we have to buy. There's plenty of stuff out there. We have to be smarter about leveraging what's already been done by somebody else, somewhere else, that teaches, a mathematical process. It's math, or it's history. It happened already, right? So there's a lot of things out there that we have to be smarter about how we're going to collect this information, store it, and use it as part of the public domain so we don't have to pay for it anymore. Because it's out there. I mean, they brought up YouTube, a true story. The other day, I tried to get a rotor off my son's car, wouldn't come off, it was rusted on. I'm not kidding you, I pulled out my phone, pulled out YouTube, There was some guy that created this really little trick with using a bolt and a nut. Did it, came off in a heartbeat. My problem solved in 10 minutes. I can't make it up. So we need to embrace this type of technology. This first year is going to be a shakeout year, no doubt. When the equipment comes in, there may be a little bit about, how we're going to refresh them. It's a new paradigm shift. The first year is a buy-in, but rest assured, we are being very aggressive, and we've spoken about this a couple of times, that we are going to be pushing the curriculum brain trust, if you will, to make best possible use of the technology and not just be something, you will need, without your iPad, you won't be able to function in the school. That's when I think of it being optimally used, because you're submitting homework that way, you're communicating with students, you're blackboarding technology that students will be using when they get to college that they're kind of challenged with today. These concepts aren't being done at the high school level. I think we need to bring it down to the high school level. So rest assured, now that we have these things, every which way possible that we can leverage this technology will be done, I guarantee it.
Anthony Prezioso, Way to Question Way. Is there a plan in place when they're lost, stolen, or broken?
Yes. It's part of the usage policy.
What, you're going to let the parents pay for that?
It's going to be part of the usage policy.
And if they can't pay for it, how will you collect the money?
Well, we have situations in place where students lose books today, and we have, they're responsible for repaying them.
Right, but this is a $300 item, isn't it?
No, it's
going to be tough. Okay, well, I want to know if you had a plan. And another question is there anything happening with the trailers?
They're going down the turnpike. There's a few left still in the district. There's work that has to be done in terms of dismantling them, disconnecting electricity and plumbing, that sort of thing. But they're
Okay, there
gradually
was
coming
supposed to be
offline.
some funds left over after they were dismantled. Do we know where that fund is going?
We won't actualize full savings this year. There will be some, but we won't actualize full savings until next year, because the contract for removing those trailers also included breakdown fees. And I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but there will be some savings this year, but bigger savings in the next budget.
Is that money earmarked?
No, it is not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Karen Rott, 44 El Dorado. I just had a couple questions about the clubs that are exempt versus those that are not. Some clarification, like chorus is exempt, but drama's exempt, but like dance, jazz is not. What the differences in those are?
Mike, can you take that?
Are you referring to
Yes,
the last
this
page?
page, yes.
Okay. Conceptually, anything with a $25 fee is required to help offset the costs of the numerous clubs that we offer here. I challenge you to find any other school district that offers this magnitude of clubs. And we want to keep the clubs as part of the budget, so we initiated the fee. Certain clubs are exempt, and again, like I mentioned before, anything that you're...
Right, I understand the honor society and all that stuff, but like between drama versus dance, jazz dance, what's the difference between that one would be exempt and one's not?
If it performs at a school function and represents the school, Dr. Gorman and I deemed it to be exempt.
Okay.
We looked at the curriculum.
Okay.
So we looked at course offerings in the school. So there wasn't a jazz course, and that was the foundation. So it was curriculum-based.
Okay.
But we still wanted exposure for those kids to be part of those experiences. But it was basically, the foundation was curriculum.
Okay. Also, Applegarth, what is going on with construction? Is that going to be starting soon? And since it hasn't started, is that going to offset when it reopens?
It hasn't started yet, and part of the reason why it hasn't started yet is because we're being very aggressive with moving. There's a lot of transition going on, as I'm sure you're aware, in the district. It will start as soon as we get the move completed, and it will not delay the initial plan to reopen the
There's a
following
contractor
year.
and all that?
Pardon?
There's a contractor?
The asbestos management company has been identified, and most of our in-house crew will do some of the other remediations that are scheduled to take place.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
Being up so many times. George Gunkelman, 5 Kenneck Court. Just a brief word in defense of music. You know, it was sort of talked about as kind of an, wouldn't it be nice? Music is a lot more important than that. And I'm not going to say that it's equal to science, but it's complementary in a way, and all of the studies show that it is. You advance your higher learning in programs that include support for the music effort, which the school always has. But in terms of looking at that funding activity that was discussed this evening, I think it's important to keep its parity where it belongs. It's very key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make one thing clear about the restoration of the transportation for a zero period. The zero period, as was mentioned earlier, was never off the books. It was really just the transportation component. And we did have parents transporting their students prior to the introduction of transportation for a zero period. So that was going well, and it was very well received. So that had been going on, and then we brought in the transportation to make things a little bit better. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear. It wasn't that we pulled the zero period off the table. It was only the transportation for the zero period. That was pulled off and then reinstated tonight. So I just want to make sure that was kind of clear.
Thank you.
Mr. Leary? In the early 1960s, the Bell system was starting the development of electronic switching systems that involved tens of billions of dollars. And initially, they thought we get our software programmers from math departments. And they came to realize that one of the untapped resources was the music departments. You're learning music, you learn a new language, and that helps immensely when you're designing software.
Thank you.
Jody Desai. I'm currently building a home in Monroe. I lived in Monroe for 5 years prior. My question is about the high school program. I'm just curious, I'm very excited to see new things happening and things like that, but I'm curious to see how we looked into what our competitive districts have been doing, Princeton, Weston, Windsor, Plainsboro, East Windsor. I'm just curious if that was part of the initial study.
Are you
Go ahead, Doctor.
Are you referring specifically to the technology initiative or in
Right.
general?
In general, like any kind of improvements that we do, are we doing
Absolutely.
that? Okay.
Absolutely. What generally happens is we solicit research from either graduate interns or folks who are working in our district who are pursuing advanced studies, and we identify like districts or similar districts or districts we may want to aspire to emulate in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on those recommendations or that research, then we make informed decisions, of course, as we assess our own data, student achievement data, personnel data, and all those other kinds of things. So by the time the public hears the discourse at this table, there's been several kinds of conversations in superintendent's cabinet, advisory, et cetera.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes, Mr. Leary.
The State Department of Education has a gradation system, A through J, for socioeconomic measures. A districts are Perth Amboy and New Brunswick, lots of poverty. You got our next door neighbor, Cranberry, it's a J. It's the upper half of the top range. We are a middle class school district. When you look at who are we comparable to, you don't look at Princeton or other schools. Those are GH, top of the middle class, or East Brunswick, bottom half of the top. When you want to talk about comparables, talk about North Brunswick, Old Bridge, South Plainfield. And then you got like-to-like comparisons. And when you do academic studies, even more importantly, when you do financial studies, our next door neighbor Old Bridge, same middle class, middle class, their students get $4,332 per student, and we get $198. I don't know what the hell is going on in the state, but man, something's rotten.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Anyone else from the public?
I just wanted to make a comment with the pay-to-play and the zero-period busing. Just as a parent in Monroe, I'm just disappointed that you opted to put back in the zero-period busing rather than the pay-to-play. The pay-to-play, I think you said, costed approximately $180,000 was going to be the revenue, where the busing costed over $200,000. The busing, taking away the busing doesn't cost the parents anything. It makes them accountable to drive their child to the school. It doesn't cost them any money. However, a parent in Monroe that has 3 children that may want to pay a sport has to incur the cost now of $300, where it would have been less if you implemented to pay to play tonight. So it's very disappointing as a parent.
Anyone else? No? Seeing none, then our next scheduled Board of Ed meeting will be Wednesday, August 17th at 7 p.m. at the high school. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.